We are ready to go. Great. Well, I am so happy to be able to join you all here this afternoon for collection development. I think this is one of the most interesting things that we can get into, particularly in an age of technology and also in an age in which we have so many different issues to think about with our populations and with our constituents that we work with. Nancy was very kind about sending me some different questions and different issues that you all are considering right now. And so I thought what I would do is kind of talk a little bit about some ways that we consider collection development for an academic library, both in print and in online form. I also have some statistics that I'm going to share with you to show you some things that I do on my end. So, as you know, I'm Cynthia Kane, and I am the Slim Librarian Liaison. So I always want to emphasize that, first of all, if you have any questions about anything that you're doing in this class or beyond this class, please don't ever hesitate to contact me. Or if you are ever interested, you can always set up a Zoom session very similar to what we're doing right now. I do a lot of Zoom research appointments with different SLIM students, and the great thing about that is then we can share our screens back and forth and we can figure out some different things as we go along. So, Nancy, at this point, I can just go ahead. Is there anything in particular that you all want me to start with? And if not, then I thought what I would do is walk through some different things with the class, like our collection development policy, what we look at in terms of online resources, access issues, and so forth. But is there anything in particular that you'd like for me to start with?
No.
Okay. All right. So with this class, I know that you all are talking about a lot of different things, and I also know that you all have a lot of different levels of expertise, particularly when it comes to different types of libraries and so forth. So I am actually going to start sharing my screen with you, and we're going to get in here. And what I am going to do is go to something here. We're going to ignore that tab. Okay, are you all seeing now our library's webpage for the University Libraries and Archives?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, this is exactly where we wanted to be. So I wanted to show you, first of all, something that is not actually all that obvious. I'm going to click on About Us, and I'm going to click on Policies. And the reason I wanted to do that is when I clicked on policies, if you are ever interested in reviewing our collection development policy for the libraries and archives for the whole of Emporia State University, this is how you can get to it. So one thing we have here is our library and liaison program, our purchase on demand policy, but also our resource management policy. So this is basically our collection development policy. And it pops up here in PDF. Like I said, if you ever would like to review this, this can be a good starting point on figuring out what we do in terms of an academic library and what we look for in terms of collection development in all of our different departments. We wrote this a few years ago, and what we tried to do was include basically general criteria for acquisitions, resources with ongoing costs such as subscriptions, evaluation, replacement, and so forth. And also deselection, weeding, which is also a huge thing in every single library, whether you are academic, public, whatever. So the reason I wanted to show you how to get to that particular policy, and again, you can go to About Us and Policies and go down to Resource Management Policy, is that this is actually going to be the basis of a lot of what we cover today. As we go along, I'm going to pause, and then Perry is also going to chat with me when we need to. If there are any questions, and we're also want to allow for questions when we finish too, because I want to make sure that I'm covering everything that you all might be looking for. So when it comes to collection development, one thing that we really have to think of in terms of an academic library, again, you have to think about this with all types of libraries, is who is your population? Who are the users? What are their needs? How are their needs actually going to change and evolve as we go along? So one thing that we have to look for in terms of Emporia State is literally and metaphorically, where are our users? Now, I will tell you, I've been at Emporia State for 22 years now. That seems like a long time. And one thing that has changed tremendously, not only with the library science program, but with other programs, both undergraduate and graduate, is our quote unquote distance education population. I don't know if there's a really good term for that. What we have to consider even more so now than ever is that we can have a lot of students that live here residentially in Emporia that for whatever reason are just not able to get physically to the library building. So in other words, we simply cannot make any assumptions that it's going to be easy for our students, even here in Emporia, to be able to access materials that are only available physically in the library. And that certainly affects a lot of what we choose and what we select anymore, and also how we evaluate how those materials are actually being used. I think SLIM is an excellent example of this. You all are in Oregon. Even here in Kansas, though, we actually have relatively few students in the SLIM program that live here residentially in Emporia. Most of our students, or a lot of our students that are in the Emporia cohort, are actually not here residentially in Emporia. I just answered an email question right before I started, as a matter of fact, from a student who is in the Emporia cohort program with SLIM, but she lives in Western Kansas, so she drives in for weekend classes. We also have a lot of students that might split their time between the Emporia cohort and also the cohort that we have in Overland Park, which is about 1.5 hours from here. So basically what that means is I, as the liaison for SLIM, have to be very aware and very cognizant of what the collection needs are for our students and our faculty, and how are we going to continue to make those available. That happens with every single department on campus. Other things that we have to be aware of are, what are the research needs? How has the curriculum actually evolved? Do we have a curriculum for a particular academic department that is still reliant upon print resources? Do we have a curriculum that needs more evidence-based research? What is it that we need? So one of our responsibilities in terms of being librarian liaisons is just continually talking. We talk with our students, we talk with our faculty members, with our different academic departments, and we're always asking these questions. And that always helps us determine, where are the dollars going to go? Where's the budget going to go with whatever we buy with print and electronic materials? I'm going to go ahead and click on databases. And of course, this will look very familiar to you all, because I know you've done a lot of research. So I wanted to highlight here, and this will probably look pretty familiar to you all as well. We have 166 databases that are reflected in our A to Z databases list, and you also know that we have them reorganized by subject or subject area, so it makes it a little bit easier if you're looking for library and information science or psychology or a related field, related area. So one thing that we have to consider, and I'm going to cover databases first, might be what databases are actually required for a given field of study, and also if we are looking at specific undergraduate or graduate programs that have different accreditation requirements. SLIM is an excellent example. SLIM is accredited by the American Library Association. We have a nursing program that's accredited. We have an education program that's also accredited. Are there certain requirements for accreditation that we need to be able to be aware of in terms of print and electronic resources, and how do we make sure that those are actually available? Another thing that we have to think of, and again, this will probably seem pretty familiar to you all as well, or to many of you, in Kansas, I'm going to go ahead and open up another tab here, and I'm going to go to Google. And I'm going to go to State Library of Kansas. And then I'm going to click on this link for online databases. And we'll let that come up here. There we are. Are you all seeing a screen now that says Kansas State Library?
Yes.
Awesome. So the Kansas State Library, like many other states, does provide access to all libraries and also residents in the state of Kansas to a variety of online databases for free. Now in Kansas, different libraries, including us, Emporia State University, actually contribute a little bit of money towards some of these packages. So in terms of collection development areas and collection development concerns, we have to think about what's available freely in terms of online databases for the most part. And then that might also affect what we actually wind up purchasing individually. And we have quite a few individual database subscriptions through different vendors. So this is a very quick example of our different databases that are available through the Kansas State Library. And as you can see, a lot of them are fairly general in nature, and they tend to focus on certain areas like general research, skill builders, basically to augment jobs or careers, history and genealogy, a little bit in terms of business and technology. Health is a main thing as well. I remember when the Kansas State Library was deciding upon their different database packages a number of years ago, and one thing that became a great concern was providing health and medical databases that could be available to hospitals and nurses, basically anyone who was actually searching for health information, and to try to make that freely available as well. So like I said, a lot of what we do in our library is we might think about what's already available through the State Library of Kansas and what we can link to in our A to Z databases list. And then from that point, again, we start thinking about our different subject areas and what their needs are. I'm going to focus a little bit upon SLIM because, as you know, that's my area. And I thought what I would do is show you some different things that we are becoming more aware of as well when I talk about how things are changing in collection development, and then in particular, literally and metaphorically, where our patrons, where our clientele happens to be. So in SLIM, what's starting to happen more and more is that I get requests from SLIM faculty and also the regional directors for different resources. But what will happen very much so now is that the requests will be for ebooks, or someone will send me a title. A SLIM faculty member might send me the author and the title of the book, and they'd say, Cynthia, is there any way that you could possibly get that as an electronic book? And if you could, that would certainly help. So that's something that I actually went back and I visited with our dean, Michelle Hammond, and we had a very good conversation. And I said, so this is a change. This is basically a need that SLIM has. So from now on, whenever I'm looking for a specific book to buy, I will always look first to see if it is available as an electronic book so that you can have access to it. Anybody can have access to this in the SLIM program. Sometimes that's easier said than done. And I can show you a pretty good example here. I'm going to try a search on a book here on online searching. And I found exactly what I was looking for on record number 2. So record number 2 is a book called Online Searching. This was actually a textbook, a guide to finding quality information efficiently and effectively. It's available in print in actually another library on the Emporia campus, the Science Math Education Library. But again, if you are in Oregon or Utah or Overland Park, that print book is probably not going to do you any good. Now up here, this will probably look familiar for those of you who have used our discovery search. I'm here at home, and so something else we have to consider in terms of access to information is how we are actually going to be able to retrieve a particular document. So with this one, with the discovery search, one thing I have to do is go ahead and sign in, and I think probably a lot of you are familiar with that as well. So part of collection development also is access, and how access might be limited in a particular way. We will often get questions from alumni who will say, I graduated from Emporia State University, and I was used to using Library and Information Science Source or PsycInfo or another database. I would still like to be able to use that. Well, access in many ways, and electronic resources are a good example of this. Most electronic resources or databases are actually governed by different license agreements that we as a university have to sign with a publisher or a vendor. And in a lot of different cases, the license agreements will state specifically that access, remote access, online access, is limited to those who are currently affiliated with that specific institution. So if I'm still a faculty member, or I'm a staff member, or I'm still a currently enrolled ESU student, I can go ahead and then have access to these databases. If I graduate, once those privileges have actually gone away, I would no longer have access. We do deal with a lot of questions from alumni who will say, is there any way that we can negotiate this? And I've done a little bit of research in this area. What I'm finding so far is that a lot of vendors are kind of reluctant to negotiate for alumni access, or they will negotiate for alumni access, but they also want a lot of money for that. And so it's just kind of an ongoing thing. It would be nice if we could figure out a way of doing that for some of our more specialized databases so that you would still have access to that. But if you're ever curious, or if you think about, well, why don't I have access to something anymore? It's not the decision of the library. It's actually a decision of the vendor or the publisher of a specific resource. So when I go back down here, I'm going to click on yes here. I am going to go to basically just this record, online searching, because something else that we have to think about, or that I have to think about and I have to research when I'm doing electronic collection development for ebooks, is that I have to do a little bit of digging to see how that electronic book is actually going to be accessed. Is it available through a specific vendor? And what is the price of the ebook? And also, does that ebook offer simultaneous access? So in other words, can an unlimited number of simultaneous users actually use that ebook? Is it limited to just 3 simultaneous users? Is it limited to 5? There's a lot of different things that kind of go into this, and all of that actually can affect the price of the ebook accordingly. So this one is called Online Searching, a guide to finding quality information efficiently and effectively. I'm going to scroll down here. And these were some things that I wanted to highlight because, again, this all delves back to issues of electronic collection development in particular. So this particular ebook was actually pretty easy for us to acquire. The discovery search that I'm using right now is actually called EDS, it's EBSCOhost Electronic Discovery Service. So this is something that is actually overlaying our library catalog plus federated searching for different databases. So in other words, when you use the discovery search, that's why you get a lot of references, not only to books, but also to some full text of articles, because it is sort of federated searching. It's discovering a lot of things at once. This particular book actually happened to be in something called the EBSCOhost ebook collection. So when we purchased this book, we were actually able to do a fairly seamless interface and access to this through our EBSCOhost discovery service. This was also seamless because our library has a contract already with EBSCOhost for ebooks. Going back to the idea of the contract, again, basically, since we have a contract, we can go ahead, we can purchase that ebook, and it should be available almost immediately. Now, something that we do run into, though, with ebooks, and a library in particular actually runs into this. we always have to look and see, well, what is the publisher going to let the patron do in terms of copying and pasting perhaps different texts from the book, and how much can you print or email or save. So it looks like it's going to be a limit of 60 pages. Um, I will tell you, people usually find a way of working around that. It's kind of one of those things that will happen no matter what. Now, this one was kind of an interesting one because I mentioned the concurrent use just a few seconds ago. The other agreement I have with our dean, Michelle Hammond, is that if I find an ebook for SLIM or for any other department, and if that ebook is available through EBSCOhost, and if that ebook has unlimited simultaneous users, we will purchase that ebook for unlimited simultaneous users. So that's sort of an agreement that we have, and that's what I always look for. However, that is not always the case. With this particular one, I think when we were looking for this one, we saw that the most that we had for the concurrent users happened to be limited user access, 3 copies available. So with this one, basically 3 people could be signed in and reading the ebook online or printing or downloading a limited amount of information. But then when the 4th person tried to get in, that person probably would have a turnaway. So we're going to come back to turnaways in just a second because that also has an impact upon collection development, particularly when we're dealing with online. But I just wanted to give you a quick example of this one because this is an example of one that was fairly easy for us to obtain. We start running into a few more difficulties if we find an ebook that is not available through something like EBSCOhost. And when it's not available through EBSCOhost, then we have to look at the publisher very carefully. We have to look at what the publisher will allow, again, in terms of importing the record into the catalog, what the accessibility is going to be. So, for example, with this one, this does offer PDF full text, which is great for reading online. And some people are comfortable reading online and others would prefer to print or save. But with this one, since that was available online as a PDF, again, that was pretty seamless. And sometimes that's not always the case. It sort of depends, again, on what the publisher makes available if it's not an EBSCOhost ebook. So these are all these different things that I do have to take into consideration. Questions so far?
No. Sorry.
None so far.
Great. Yeah, Perry, that sounded a little bit eerie there. Okay, so I'm going to go back here because I did want to show you an example of an ebook, but I also wanted to show you something else that we have to think about, again, when we're making decisions, particularly when it comes to online or electronic collection development. So I'm going to go back to the library's webpage. Okay. And are you still seeing the library's webpage again?
Yes.
Great. Okay. I tend to pause as I go along because I always want to make sure you're seeing the same screen that I am. So one of my roles in our library right now is assessment. And with assessment, I cover a lot of different things on what's working in the library for all types of services and resources. What isn't working? What can we do better? What can we tweak? So part of assessment for us and for my role can be actually the assessment of different databases and also different electronic journals. We're going to click on this journals link for just a second, because I spent some time on ebooks and databases, but another key part of collection development for us, particularly again with SLIM, is providing seamless access to journal articles. And I know that you all probably have encountered this because we live in an age in which sometimes it's really easy to get the full text of an article in different databases, and other times that can be like you're sort of jumping through a few hoops. So something else that we have to think about, and I'm actually going to call up one journal that is right in our field. There's Journal of Access Services, and we're going to go to Journal of Academic librarianship. So when I clicked on this Journals tab, this is a software program that we have that's called Browsine. And if you've had a chance to use Browsine in any way, it's really a nice visual interface to different electronic journals. It's not perfect. It doesn't work in all instances, but it does work for some instances. And there's a lot of fun things that you can do with Browsine as well. The reason I called up Journal of Academic Librarianship is that this is an example of one that we actually have an electronic journal subscription, an electronic periodical subscription. So a lot of our library and information science journals that you all have access to in full text, we keep as separate electronic journal subscriptions. Sometimes they are in packages. One package is called Science Direct, and that's actually from the publisher called Elsevier. We have other packages as well called Emerald. We have one package that's called Emerald Management 120, and there are a lot of management journals in that one, including library and information science journals that deal with more library management concerns and so forth. We also have a lot of separate journal subscriptions or periodical subscriptions that are actually through the vendor of EBSCO. So you heard me talk about EBSCO Host. EBSCO is kind of a large vendor, and if any of you work in different libraries, you may wind up using EBSCO as a vendor for your periodicals. So one of my responsibilities, among others, is to keep track of usage statistics. I do usage statistics for our electronic databases that we have individual subscriptions to, but I also do usage statistics for our different electronic journal subscriptions. So what I have to do in that case then is I have to go back through an administrative interface, and basically I download a lot of Excel spreadsheets. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking for, in a specific electronic journal, the number of times that full text has actually been retrieved. Has it been viewed or downloaded? Now here's the kicker, and this is something you do want to keep in mind when it comes to collection development, particularly with electronic resources. That's only one metric. That's basically only one measure. So for the Journal of Academic Librarianship, I might see that there are a lot of full text retrievals in the case of a month or in a given academic year. That shows me that basically the electronic access is working. It shows me that people are reading, that people are actually at least retrieving the full text of the articles. It does not show me how those articles are actually being used, because it may be a situation in which somebody actually retrieved the full text of an article from this journal, read it, and said, this isn't going to work. I need to find something else. I don't have any way of knowing that unless I had a way of digging much, much deeper. It is one metric. It is not the only metric. It can, though, be a starting place for conversation. So I'm going to share another part of my screen here. And I'm actually going to share with you a report that I downloaded a couple of weeks ago from our EBSCO host databases. So are you all seeing a spreadsheet right now?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so I wanted to show you this. So this is a spreadsheet that I downloaded from EBSCO Host, and we do have a lot of different databases that are available through EBSCO Host. I did this one on purpose because I wanted to show you that you all are using the library and information science databases, and I am personally thrilled about that because it shows me that they are indeed being utilized. Again, it doesn't tell me how, but it shows me that they are being utilized. So I actually edited this spreadsheet so that I could show you from July 1st of 2017 to June 30th of 2018, what has actually been used. When you do usage statistics, both for electronic journals, but particularly for databases, we use a standardized way of statistics running that's called counter statistics. So if you Googled like counter or counter compliant, you could find a lot of information on that. So with counter statistics, that just simply means that databases that are keeping usage statistics that are counter compliant are gathering their information about statistics in a fairly standardized way. So it makes it a little bit easier to compare usage statistics from one database or one vendor to another. So counter-compliant, that's basically what that is. These are counter-compliant statistics. So I ran something that's called Database Report 1. R4 is the abbreviation for the counter-compliant statistics. Database Report 1 for counter simply means that I'm getting the total number of searches, the result clicks, and record views by month and a particular database. So I edited this spreadsheet so that you were seeing library and information science source, library literature and information science full text, which we still have, library literature and information science retrospective. That will give you historical articles. And finally, this one is actually known as LISTA for short. It's Library Information Science and Technology Abstracts, but there is some full text that will be linked on that as well. Again, keep in mind that any of these statistics for databases or electronic journals are just simply that. It's one metric. So I can see that from July 2017 to June of 2018, there were a lot of regular searches, but there were also a lot of federated searches. So difference between these two. Library and Information Science Source is one of the databases that's pulled in through our federated search of EBSCOhost EDS, the Electronic Discovery Service. So the discovery search that pops up on the library's webpage, that's the federated searching. That reflects the fact that if anybody went into Library and Information Science Source directly, like through the A to Z list of the databases, that's how many searches they actually did in that reporting period. But if searches actually took place in the discovery search, there were actually quite a few more. And when I go down here, it looks like there were over 27,000 clicks that actually showed results. And finally, on record views, this one is a little bit trickier. Record views doesn't necessarily reflect the full text. I'd have to drill down a little bit deeper for that. But it does show that if somebody found a record for an article, when you find just the record and you click on the link to find out, to see a little bit more of that, that's actually the view of the record. So when you click on that record, that's when you're viewing the abstract of the article. If the HTML full text is there, you'll see that as well. And then you would click on another link to see the PDF full text. So these are great numbers. These are wonderful numbers. These are the numbers that actually my dean wants to see, because I can show those to her and I can say, it looks like these databases are actually being utilized. Again, it's one metric. It's not the only one, but it does help a little bit. So I'm going to go back over here. And let's go back to where we were on this screen.
Cindy?
Yes, yes.
What are result clicks?
Okay, result clicks are a little bit of a misnomer. Basically, a result click means that I actually got results in my search. So if I go back over here for just a second, I'm going to go ahead and share that one again. There we go. Are you seeing that spreadsheet again?
No.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, there we go.
Let's try that again. Ah, I see what's happening here. Just a second.
Okay.
I'm going to stop this. I'm going to just do that again on the share and call that back up. Here we go. Okay. Are you seeing that spreadsheet again now?
Yes.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for letting me know. So with the result clicks, basically this means that when I actually did my search and I actually found something, these are actually just the searches that I performed, whether or not they actually came up with results or not. This actually shows that I had 27,000, basically 27,000 searches, or actually even more than that. with the result clicks, it looks like I actually had a number of clicks that actually came up with results. And then drilling down here a little bit more, it looks like I had over 15,000 times in which I actually had people that were clicking on a record and viewed it. So this is kind of an interesting thing because I would actually expect this number to be a little bit larger than this with the searches federated and automated. I actually need to drill down a little bit more and see what's going on with that. But these actually came up with results. And I know I'm not explaining that nearly as well as I should, but it at least shows me that things are happening and that I'm actually getting some results and people are, again, finding results. Whether or not those results are actually valuable or not, whether they're being used, that's a whole different thing altogether. So I know I didn't explain that very, very well, but at least it's showing me that there are results that are coming up.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Questions right now, because I know I've covered a lot of information, but I'm sure there are other things out there that I haven't highlighted as yet or that you'd like to know about.
Yeah, we do have a question. Hold on.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Just right. Did you hear that, Cindy?
I did not hear that. Can you
Okay.
repeat
Let me.
that?
Yeah, I think I can. The true result of success and what the students were thinking would be best is to see the number of downloads for an
Mm-hmm.
article.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that, even if they could download it and it not be valuable, but are you able to get that from EBSCO? Number of
Yes,
downloads?
yes. In fact, let me do a little bit of checking on my end, and it may take me just a few seconds, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up a spreadsheet because that goes back to basically we're entering the third year of a project in which we're analyzing all of our electronic periodicals in terms of downloads, full text retrievals, and so forth. So let me do a little bit of tinkering here.
And then we have
You
another
probably see
question
that on your
too.
screen for just a second, but I do want to show you that. That's a great question to ask. I'm moving a couple of things on my end here, so. And just as soon as I pull something up here on my Google Sheets, I'm going to share that with you. Actually, I'm going to pull up another spreadsheet here, and then I'm going to share that with you. On here. Here we are. This is what I wanted. Okay, so I am going to move this so you can see this a little bit better, and then I'm going to share this with you because this is going to answer some of what you were asking and what the students were interested in. Let's go here. Okay, are you seeing, it's a Google spreadsheet now that's called Taylor and Francis Journals via EBSCO?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a quick example of an ongoing project that we have in terms of assessment. So, like I said, one of my responsibilities in terms of usage statistics is to do a lot of analysis behind the scenes. We are currently in our third iteration of going through all of our print and electronic periodical subscriptions and looking at prices, and we're also looking at cost per use and the number of downloads per electronic journal. This is a very small subset of what we have. These are basically journals that we have through a vendor called Taylor and Francis, but we're actually getting them through EBSCO. And we were looking at these because we wanted to focus a little bit more upon these specific journals that we were getting through a publisher and just kind of seeing how they were being used. So this is my ongoing project. So when I am dealing with this type of analysis, what I'm doing is looking at the format. I also look at items such as, is this particular electronic journal or periodical also available full text in one or more of our current databases? And as you can see, a lot of them are not. This would be a subscription cost for this journal for 2018. This is what it cost in 2017. We find that a lot of journal prices go up an average of about 3 to 5% per year. It's just sort of it's an ongoing cost. With this one, it looks like in 2018, this is a calendar year, or not, pardon me, I'm sorry. It's not a calendar year. It would be actually an academic year. So this is like FY 2018, this would be FY 2017. So with American Journal of Distance Education, in FY 18, there were 42 downloads for full text. In 2017, there were 37. So that's holding fairly steady. This was the cost per full text retrieval in 2018, and this was the cost in 2017. So that's actually what it cost per article. Now, a question that I've had in another collection development class has been, do we as a library have a particular cutoff point? So in other words, if a particular full text retrieval is costing an average of $20 per article or $25 per article or something like that, do we have a cutoff in which we say we might need to cancel that journal and then look at it through document delivery or interlibrary loan? An average that we look at right now is about $25 per article, but that is also a moving target because, again, a lot of it has to do with what the program needs. A lot of it has to do with accreditation. A lot of it has to do, too, with what classes are being offered in a given year or a given semester. So a journal in Library and Information Science, for example, I might find that in the fall semester, it's really being used heavily. In the spring semester, it's not being used as heavily. So I need to go back to the classes. I need to go back to the SLIM faculty. Well, the class maybe that was using that journal was offered in the fall, but it wasn't offered in the spring. Does that mean we're going to cancel it? No. You have a lot of different factors that you have to take into consideration. But this is one thing that you can look at. You can indeed look at the total full text retrievals, which actually will refer to downloads or printing. So I don't have a way of distinguishing that right now, but it just shows, and it can also refer to the actual viewing of that PDF full text online as well. Does that help a little bit?
Hold on a minute. Does that help? Does that help? Okay. And then we had another question.
Great.
Hold on. Elliot or? Okay, go ahead. Hold on. I'll translate. Wait. Mm-hmm. Do you have a way to retrieve access through Google Scholar? So if you have,
that's a good question.
Somebody links through Google Scholar, can you count that?
Yeah, and then gets that. I know there are ways of doing that. I confess that I am not that technologically adept yet, but I suspect, and I would be very surprised if there were not ways of doing that as well.
But once they're in your library, won't that count as a use?
It should count. It should count. Yeah. That actually goes back to kind of related questions. So I'm glad that one came up. When I'm looking at full text retrievals, and actually this is a good example of this one as well. This isn't happening as much anymore, but we used to have an overlay that was called EBSCOhost EJS, Electronic Journal Service. We don't have that anymore. But with that one, I actually had to look at two different levels of full text retrieval. So this is kind of like what might happen with Google Scholar, although if it's going through our library, it should count. When we had EBSCOhost EJS, I had one set of full text retrievals that I got directly from EBSCOhost EJS. However, I had a totally separate set of full text retrievals that came directly through the publisher. So if, actually, let me go back over here and I'll show you a good example of that. Okay, I'm going to stop this share and I'm going to go back to where I was on the Journal of Academic Librarianship. Okay, so this is kind of sort of related. So right now, I have browsing statistics that I can get a hold of. Browsing will tell me at the journal level how many times people have actually gone through and looked at the Journal of Academic Librarianship. But if I go to here, and let's just go, oh, effective techniques for marketing electronic resources. That's a perfect one. Let's go ahead and look at the PDF for that. So it's locating my full text here. Okay, so I have the full text here for this article from the Journal of Academic Librarianship. This actually just counted as a full text retrieval directly through Science Direct, directly through that vendor. So I had a situation not too long ago in which I had to look at the EBSCOhost EJS statistics, and then I had to compare them to the publisher's usage statistics for different journals. That took a lot of time. So I suspect with Google Scholar, it's going to count as a hit, because if you're getting to the PDF full text and it's hitting that library's webpage or hitting that vendor, that should count as a full text retrieval. But that's something, like I said, I kind of need to dig into a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it should hit that. That's a great question.
Yeah. Hold on a minute. Ilana, did you have a question? No. Anybody else? Okay. We're good to go.
Okay. So at this point, Nancy and then others, are there other areas that I have not actually covered yet that you were interested in highlighting?
The only other two things I mentioned were paywalls and then content coming and going, and how you deal with that as a collection of
Absolutely.
things that
Absolutely.
disappear and in your databases.
Yeah. Paywalls, let's go ahead and talk about that first. With our library, I would say that we're hitting paywalls more often when we are dealing with students or other patrons that are doing searching through, basically through services such as Google Scholar. And I think it's hard sometimes to explain that if you're using something such as Google Scholar, and Google Scholar is awesome. I use it extensively as well. Sometimes it's hard, I think, this is an education thing, it's hard sometimes to make sure that our patrons understand that with Google Scholar, it's free in the sense that you can search it freely, but then basically free, you get what you pay for. And then you hit that paywall when you find that article through, or find the reference to an article through Google Scholar, you click on that link and then it takes you to the publisher's web page. And then if you wanted access to that article from that particular point, you would have to pay for it. Those are the kinds of questions that I think we're encountering more from our patrons. And then it's incumbent upon us to say, well, let's go back to our library's webpage. Let's search in the journals tab, because we may already be paying for access to that journal. And if we are, here it is. If not, you can do interlibrary loan. With interlibrary loan, you're going to have a little bit of a delay in terms of the time frame. However, it is still going to be free for you. So in terms of paywalls, that's really what we hit.
And the embargoes.
And the embargoes are absolutely, oh my gosh. I think the embargoes are actually harder for us to deal with, to be honest. And actually, let's go back to, it may not be on this spreadsheet, but I'm going to do a quick search here on another spreadsheet because I wanted to show you something else. Speaking of embargoes and also moving targets, such as access, and when access goes away, I'll show you something here. And I'm going to share my screen again in just a second. So let's go to this one. As you can see, I have a lot of Google spreadsheets. Okay. And I'm calling up something just real quick here because I want to be able to actually zero in on something for you all to see, and then I'm going to share that. Actually, here is a perfect example. Okay, I'm going to share this screen again. So when we have been doing our review of our print and online and print plus online recommendations, are you seeing a spreadsheet now that says EBSCO print and print plus online recommendations?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so this was one of my latest projects this summer that I was working on. The reason I was moving this a little bit is that I wanted to highlight specifically Harvard Business Review. This is a good example. So Harvard Business Review, classic in the field of business and management. Harvard Business Review is available from 1922 to the present date in a database called Business Source Complete and also Business Source Premier. We have access to both of those databases. We also have been keeping it in print, and when it says that it's available print plus online, there is a way of getting online access directly through Harvard Business Review if we were interested in doing that, if we were not keeping or if we didn't have the database. But in this particular instance, it would be a 12-month rolling back file only. Now, the other thing that we run into is that with different journals, I'm kind of scrolling down here too, we have some journals that are available. Let me do this here just a second. Oh, come on here. Aha, okay. Actually, here's a perfect example. When we're talking about access and then embargoes and also things moving, this is something else that we had to look at. So Novel was a journal that we have in print. We don't have it online because it's not available online. We opted to keep this one in print in the library for our English department, creative writing, and so forth. It is available in PDF in Academic Search Complete and other databases from 1990 to 2010. So after 2010, I can't get any of the PDFs for that one. And this particular, here's another one. Musical Quarterly, we opted to keep this one in print. It's available in Academic Search Complete, PDF, from 1996 to the present. But when we're talking about embargoes, this has a 1 year, 365 delay for an embargo. What is very hard to explain to patrons is the concept of embargoes, because embargoes, which basically refer to the time frame that the electronic reproduction rights are actually released for a particular issue or a journal, those are set by the publisher. They're not set by a vendor and they're not set by a library. But it can be incredibly frustrating when a patron is doing research in a database and they see the full text of all different issues of a specific periodical except for that last year or that last month or the last 3 months. And they're like, why isn't it there? Why don't you have that? That is very frustrating. So when we're making collection development decisions, we might say, again, depending upon the journal, we might say, we can cancel this journal because it's available in a database, even with an embargo of a year or an 18-month embargo, if we know that the department, the academic department, is going to be comfortable with that. And if they are okay with getting the more current articles through interlibrary loan or document delivery. But those are conversations that we have to have with different departments. I can't just make that decision in a vacuum because I don't know. So yeah, it's very frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. What other questions do you guys have? Anything for Cindy? Okay. Do you want to come up here and ask? I'm gonna have my student.
Thank you.
Sorry, if anybody else cares about this, I can shut up.
No, we care.
So we're seeing more academic libraries in Idaho work with professors to develop OERs, open
Mhm.
educational resources.
Yep.
Is that something that you guys are working on in Emporia? Because I think it's a librarian issue that we should all care about, and it helps with student retention. And I think it's kind of criminal that these vendors are raising their prices every year and that usage is going down. And I think we should hop on the OER movement. So.
Right. I am so happy that you asked that question because OERs are basically a whole different thing that we need to think of right now. So I would definitely include, obviously, open access journals as a part of open educational resources, OERs, overall. Yes. As a matter of fact, here on the Emporia campus, just for ESU as a whole, there was an OER committee that was recently formed, and one of my colleagues in the library, Bethany Odell, who's our virtual learning librarian, is on that committee. So I'm really happy because we need library representation on that. This is actually an initiative that's coming from our provost, Dr. David Cordell. And Dr. Cordell has basically, well, I think the other day he sent out an email message to all faculty, not requiring, of course, but encouraging faculty to do the research on OERs. Obviously not to compromise academic quality, but to be very mindful and cognizant of the fact that textbook prices are just out of this world. They're just sky high. And also in terms of access to different journal articles, there are different ways that we can do this. So yes, we do have an OER committee that is getting going. We teach a course in the library for ESU's general education program. It's UL 100, Research Skills Information Technology. And in our course, we made a very deliberate decision several years ago to use an open access textbook on that. We are very pleased with its quality. The students are pleased with the fact that it's free, and so we encourage that. Now, I will also tell you, though, and I'm sure you're very familiar with this, in different academic institutions, depending upon what the requirements are for tenure and promotion in different departments, I think more and more departments are becoming accepting of OERs, publishing an open access textbook, publishing in an open access journal, and that's accepted for tenure and promotion or for annual evaluations. However, I think there's still some stigma, for lack of a better word, that an OER or an open access journal is somehow of quote unquote less quality. It's not peer reviewed, it doesn't meet academic rigor. I do think that's something that we in libraries have the opportunity to lead in, because what do we do every day? We evaluate information. That's what we're doing every day in terms of collection development issues. So yes, we have a committee, and we're going to be making a push for that across campus and basically just across ESU itself.
Great.
That's a great question.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else before Cindy goes? Well, thanks, Cindy, for coming in on a Saturday.
Absolutely happy to do that. Yeah. And again, if any of you have any other follow-up questions, you know how to reach me at ckane1@emporia.edu, and I'm also happy to set up a Zoom appointment with you. So have a wonderful rest of the afternoon.
Thank you.
Oh, bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Leave the meeting.
Oh, okay.
She's probably gonna log us
So
off.
she talked about the state library